G'day everybody, I'm Patrick. Welcome to the workshop. Today I'm going to be taking apart a old-ish reproduction dining table that is not the right shape or size for what I need, and I'm going to turn it into a round table using the same legs, pulling apart the frame, redoing the top. This is the piece. It's fine. The workmanship's okay. It's a pretty standard construction with the braces underneath. There's some separation in the top here, but I quite like the legs and I think I can make it into a cute little round table pretty quickly. I figure rather than using a whole bunch of new timber, since I'm trying to create a piece that has a bit of quirkiness, I might as well start with something like this that already has some questionable character and pull it apart, put it back together in a way that suits me better for the space that I need to fill. And, you know, maybe you'll learn something along the way. First thing I'll do is remove these cross braces and then all of these little fasteners, which are common in older furniture. I'm going to tighten up all of these braces and make sure that there's no other fixing that needs to be done to the structure. And then I'm going to start cutting it up. So my plan with this piece is to cut the long rails and rejoin them so that they're the same length as the short rails. So I turn this base from a rectangle into a square. I'm going to rejoin those long rails with dominoes. If you didn't have dominoes, you could use dowels. You could create a half lap, but the aim of this project is speed, and I'm just using the tools that I have. I'm also going to be having a look at each of these leg joints and making sure that they're stable enough that it's worth putting the time into this table that it's not going to fall apart, and reinforcing them wherever I need to. All of these corner joints are constructed in a way that is really common for this kind of mass-produced furniture. I've got these little glue blocks glued in. These joins will be some sort of mortise and tenon or a dowel joint, and then they use these corner braces which add additional strength. I'm going to keep those corner braces in. I've taken some of these apart. I could fully break these apart and rejoin them, but I'm not sure that it's worth it. And I think what I can probably do, if it needs it, is really carefully place a dowel all the way through the outside into the rail. And if I make them really neat and symmetrical, for one thing, it'll be up under the tabletop and you'll never see it. And the second thing is, even if you do see it, it'll be neat and it'll be a nice little feature. In order to make this square, I need to cut each of my long rails to half the length of the short rails because I'm going to be joining them together in the center. Now these short rails at the smallest point are 440mm long. So I need to mark my long rails at 220 from both ends and then cut them on the panel saw. So my leg units are cut in half, but I do want to reinforce each of those joins, and that will affect the geometry just slightly because it'll pull the joins closer. And then I will figure out a way to recut those to make sure that they're perfectly straight to get me really good joinery. So I was messing around with this and one of them was wobblier than I realized. So I pulled it apart. It's actually a really nice machine-made mortise and tenon. Now, the glue is just failed, so I don't know exactly what they used. I could probably figure it out. It may even be hide glue, but the tenons are intact and not cracked, and the mortises look really nice. So fairly well made. I'm going to clean the glue off and then just use a better glue that will hold for longer. Now, hide glue, if that's what it's used, I'd have to mess around with it to find out, is perfectly adequate. Over time, it can get brittle. I think this would just be more suited for this restoration to just use Technoglue epoxy or a polyurethane. If this was a really fantastic piece that you're trying to restore. A lot of people would continue to use hide glue because it can be repaired. It can be pulled apart, you can steam the joints apart. I got this table for free. It's not handmade. I don't think it's worthy of a full restoration, especially because I'm totally changing its shape and design. So the value in it for me is its strength and its visual character. And so I'm just gonna bang it back together with some epoxy and those joints will last way longer than I will. Make sure you label everything as you pull it apart. My components came apart pretty easily, which is wonderful. It's definitely hide glue because when I apply heat to it, like a cigarette lighter, it smells like burning hair and it softens really easily. So I'm gonna try and remove some of it using hot water, toothbrushes. If I need to, I can use some acetone. This is quickly turning into a, rather than a throw some screws in it project, I'm now delicately removing hide glue with hot water. But look, you could have thrown some screws in it. Once you know how to do things a slightly better way, it's hard to not do them the slightly better way. It is partially soluble in water. Acetone apparently works. I don't do a lot of this kind of stuff, so it's a little bit of an experiment for me. But with water, you can feel it getting slippery, so it is partially dissolving. It's very old, quite brittle. Yeah, it comes off quite sticky with the water. So the way that I found works the best to get this off, in this instance, is with a heat gun. It kind of bubbles up all the hide glue and then you can just scrape it off and it kind of falls away like a powder. When I was making them all wet first, it was dissolving the really thin stuff, but not the thick stuff. So, I've got the glue off. I straightened up those cuts on the two short pieces. And now I need to glue them together. Like I said, I'm going to use the domino. I want to place two 8mm dominoes in here. Pretty tight fit, not a lot of tolerance. So I need to mark it out accurately and get them all cut. There's really only two of these components that I need to do. That one and that one. And that one and that one. So I'm going to glue those members up. I'm going to use 20-minute polyurethane because I can. It means I can keep working on this today rather than waiting till tomorrow. This will be a nice strong joint. There will be a slight visible glue line. It'll be tight. The joinery will be tight and strong, but inevitably you're going to see it. To be honest, I actually think I'm going to paint the whole base of this table with like a milk paint and leave the top raw. So I'm not particularly concerned about seeing the glue line, I just want it to be strong. Okay, so I've got this top. It is about 900 by 1500. I want a top that is about 1.1 times 1.1. So how do we make a rectangle into a square? I have an idea. I don't know if it's a great idea, but I'm gonna give it a shot, which is we cut each board diagonally and slide them against each other to expand this shape. What that means is that our joins will be, some will be linear and some will be diagonal. But I think it'll be kind of geometric and cool. You may not even see it that much with a light timber. I'm gonna do a demonstration with some paper or cardboard and then we'll start cutting up some timber. This is a scale model essentially of our tabletop. It's divided into roughly 6 pieces of timber, which are not actually the same width. which is fun for me. My plan is to cut all of those strips of timber back out because the joinery in between them is not good anymore. That's my starting point. And then every piece will get cut on the diagonal, probably with a track saw. And then we realign every piece like this so we can get a square instead of a rectangle. This is a lot of work, but I think I can smash that out pretty quickly. Got the panel saw, I've got a track saw. It's gonna have to have some dominoes in it because otherwise when you put clamping pressure, all of those wedges will slide against each other. But if I can pull it off, turning a rectangle into a square and then a circle, I think it'll look fantastic. All the boards got ripped down on the diagonal. I set up to do it with a track saw and I needed 2 tracks and they're just really long. It was kind of too long for what I needed. So I used the panel saw, which is a luxury that not everybody has, but any straight edge and a circular saw or a track saw would do a great job at this. You could also cut them on a bandsaw and then clean it up using a hand plane or a jointer. It's just use the tools you've got, anything will work as long as you get a straight edge. The first thing I needed to do this layout was put all the boards as if they hadn't been cut next to each other and lay them out as if it was a traditional straight table. From that point, we can find the center in this direction, which I've marked right here. It's not necessarily on the join of a board because these boards were all slightly different lengths, and as they all got cut on the diagonal, all those angles are different. Anyway, the center is in the middle of a board. It's not in between a join or anything sensible like that. You then need a trammel or a compass, a circle marking tool, to figure out how far you can squish each of these triangles against each other to balance the width to the length. Now this would be a little simpler if you were just trying to make a square table out of a rectangular table, because you could just butt up all the ends and squish them all in the same amount. Because this is the circle, I have the luxury of pushing these ones that are towards the outside of the circle in further than this one, which is in further than this one, etc. Because the circle line follows along here. And the further that we can push these triangles against each other, the fatter our circle becomes. But you need to make sure that you can still do that within the circle line that you've drawn. The alignment is really critical here. If you're doing a traditional square glue up, the boards could kind of go wherever they need to go. If you happen to get number 2 board in number 4 position, it wouldn't really matter too much. This really matters. So label every board, put a sequential order on them, mark out your dominoes carefully, get cutting. These are the domino locations. I haven't measured them out, I've just made sure they're far enough in from the edge, and then everything's labelled. While the tabletop finishes drying, I'm going to glue the legs back into the frame. This is the members that I cut and joined. So you can see a faint join line there. You can see it a bit more clearly on the back where the wood color changes. But like I said, I think I'm going to paint this. Even if I didn't, I think it's going to look totally passable. It's underneath the edge of the table. You're never really going to see it. And the curve is really consistent. It matches the other one, which happy accident, to be honest. all of these tenons are cleaned up, I'm going to use 20-minute polyurethane again because it lets me keep working later on. And I think it will work well with these joints. The basic shape of the table has been cut out, sanded off all that polyurethane, and now I'm going to use my circle jig to refine that circle with the router. I have my centering plate, which means I don't need to put a pinhole in the table itself. You could do this from the underneath if you wanted to, but I think this is useful. This thing just gets stuck down to the tabletop, and then my router jig can sit on the pin, like I said, without needing to pin the table. You need to know that you have found a center. So I have got cross lines running that way and that way. I'll align this with those lines and then just CA glue, super glue it down. Table's all sanded, top and bottom. I want to add a decorative profile to the top edge in line with the profile that was on the table before I butchered it, or improved it, if you like. I believe this profile is called an OG or an OGI. I have a round bit that'll do something close, so I'm going to test that out. This is in a 1/2 inch shank. It's got a 22mm height. There are different sizes you can get, and that is the profile that it's cutting. I will add a little round over to the underside. The way this table was designed originally, it had that profile on the top edge, and so that's how I'm going to do it. It wouldn't be a profile that I would put on a more modern piece that I usually make, but this is a bit of an adventure in restoration, so this is the one I'm going to use. In a perfect world, you can protect all of the timber from the squeeze out by using masking tape. There's some cleanup you can do when the glue is wet using methylated spirits, but inevitably the glue continues to squeeze out. So often when using polyurethane, there is just some amount of cleaning up that you have to do. Luckily, it's fairly soft, so it will just cut with a little Stanley knife. One tool that I really love is this crank-handled chisel. I've had it for years. The reason it works so well is because you can work flat on a surface like that without the handle getting in the way. This is a traditional straight chisel, and you can see that you can't get the blade flat onto the timber without using the bevel, which runs the risk of diving into the timber. With the crank handle chisel, you can lay the blade flat on the timber, and it means you can work into those corners and get material off really easily. The other tool that's super useful for removing glue or varnish or all kinds of things off a piece like this in complicated little internal corners is a scraper. Now, most of the time you can just use a rectangular one. They do actually make them with a curved profile. They're harder to sharpen and kind of harder to maintain, but the straight ones work wonderfully. You can get them right into these internal corners, scrape off any glue that's hit the surface, and it's more useful once you've removed the bulk of the glue with a chisel or a knife to go through and clean up with this. So, top sanded, base is sanded, all the glue's removed. I am on the mezzanine of my workshop, which is where I dump things and also where I sometimes oil things. This is the table. So cute little round table, slightly splayed legs, turned detail, curved aprons, The timber's quite nice. I don't actually know what it is. It's fairly lightweight. You can actually see some of the diagonal cuts that I made to totally change the geometry of this table. I'm going to use Evolution Hardwax on the top, Evolution Classic, and I'm going to undercoat the legs white and then apply some color to them. I use Hardwax for pretty much every piece I make, and the reason is twofold. It's incredibly durable. I use it on bathroom vanities, kitchen bench tops, and two, I find it really easy to apply and fairly stress-free, especially in an active, dusty workshop like this. The way I'll apply this on this table is I'll do a very thin first coat because it's very cold outside and I want to make sure it has the opportunity to fully soak in and set. When it's really cold, you can also add up to 5 or 10% thinners, which is white spirits, into the Hardwax, and that will increase the speed at which it goes off and help it penetrate into the timber. The first coat, I'm going to apply thinly, and I'll do another coat tomorrow. I'll start by doing the coat on the bottom, and then I'll flip the piece over. And one of my tricks when I'm applying finish on the top and bottom of something is that I put them on these little triangular battens, and I make sure that the spline of the batten, the peak of the triangle, runs with the grain. So if it leaves any line, it generally just gets hidden in the grain and it's not really seen. And also, by doing the underside of the table first with oil, it means that the side that would have the lines on it is the underside. So again, it's never really seen. You can use nail boards where you've got a little nail point poking up, but I found that they tend to scratch really badly. I found these to be easier to use and less potential damage to the tabletop. You can use a brush or a roller or a rag to apply Hardwax. I'll usually use a foam roller, but because it's so cold, I'm brushing it on and then I'm actually going to wipe off the excess with a rag, and that will increase my drying time and make sure there's no chance that the bottom layer is still soft when I apply the second layer. Thanks for coming along for the video today and watching as I convert this old rectangular table into a round table. Hope there's been something in there that's useful to you. This is the finished product, almost. It needs another coat of oil on the top and it needs another coat of paint on the legs. It is so cold in here that it is taking days for this stuff to dry. But overall, I think it's pretty cute. For something that was incredibly daggy that I was given for free, it's now a wonderful little piece for our living room. Let me know if there's anything that you'd like to see in the videos. As always, there'll be links to the products I've used in the video description below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, it really helps us out. I'll see you next week.